I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At Friday's House Rules Committee hearing, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene argued against the bipartisan gun reform bill with Congressman Jamie Raskin. The Georgia Republican decried the bill, stating that it violated constitutional rights and made citizens less safe. The Maryland Democrat pushed back, grilling her on the meaning of, quote, well-regulated militia. Greene was questioned on whether the Second Amendment protects armed militias operating outside the state's purview. He also asked if students should be armed in schools. Let's watch the tense back and forth.
But I just found something that said, you're quoted as saying in talking to Real America's Voice that whereas January 6th was just a riot at the Capitol, and if you think what our Declaration of Independence says, it says to overthrow tyrants. So do you think that the assault on the Capitol was a legitimate exercise of popular insurrection?
Oh, Mr. Raskins, I know it's early in the morning, but this is the Rules Committee. This isn't your Trump derangement committee that you call the January 6th committee.
My last name doesn't have an S on it, Ms. Greene.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Raskin.
Okay, you've been talking about the Second Amendment. You came here to talk to us about the Second Amendment, right?
I'm here to talk about due process rights and protecting Americans' due process rights.
All
yes.
right, so I just want to be clear. You've been quoted at least as saying that the January 6th riot at the Capitol was in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which says you can overthrow tyrants. You've also testified that people have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to go. So it seems to me that lots of people were armed on that day, but the logic of your argument is that everybody could have been armed and brought their weapons with them. And I'll take that as a conclusion.
What evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed that day? Mr. Raskin, do you have that to introduce into the record?
Just wait for it. But when it comes out, presumably you'll be supporting it, right? That they would have a right to have guns and knives with them. Is that right?
Mr. Raskin.
Is that your position?
No, Mr. Raskin.
Well, no, I'm going to ask the questions here because this is the Rules Committee. You're not a member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Greene. Are you? Are you a member of the Rules Committee?
I'm a witness here at the Rules Committee.
Okay, so let me just ask you a question.
That is talking about due process rights, not your lies about January 6th, about President Trump and others.
Okay, I never mentioned him. You've brought him up. All right, I think your position has become clear. You think the Declaration of Independence says overthrow tyrants, that endows the people.
That's
that's
not
a quote from you.
No, you're twisting words in an article.
Well, tell us what is your position
I'm
on it.
used to that.
I just ask that we not talk over each other because our court reporter, the stenographer here is having a difficult time.
Mr. Scott, let me just ask you, and then we can close this, because I think I've gotten everything I need to get, but what's your position on it? Do you think the people have a constitutional right or a right under the Declaration of Independence to attack the government with any kind of weapon?
No, and let me clarify. You asked me my opinion on the Second Amendment. Obviously, my opinion is not consistent with recent Supreme Court decisions. The majority of the court is disagreed, and we got to go with what the Supreme Court. We have to respect the court, and they are working out what the individual right is. And they have said in the Heller decision that there are limitations. Yesterday, they indicated that the limitation that New York had was too much. So we're still trying to figure out what the individual right is. As I indicated, I think a plain reading of the Second Amendment is inconsistent with those decisions, but the decisions are what they are. And, you know, our system is the Supreme Court is the law of the land.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, the Constitution gives Congress the right to regulate, arm, fund, organize, discipline the militias. 50 states have banned private militias. There is no right for people to take up arms against the government, and I think we need to put down this insurrectionist interpretation of the Second Amendment that's out there. Justice Scalia has made it very clear that the Second Amendment permits reasonable regulations in the interest of public safety and public security, and this legislation advances, however modestly, that goal of making us all safer. And I yield back to you.
Ms. Fishbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I wasn't quite sure which committee we were in for a few minutes there. and I just want to bring it back to, we're in the Rules Committee, and we are talking about a very specific bill that was sent over from the Senate, that there was no process that was handled either in the Senate or in the House. And I had mentioned earlier that we do have the opportunity to take it up, send it to committee, and have the kind of hearings so that we are not dealing with these kinds of things in